So when I was a little kid, between the ages of like 9 and maybe 11, I acquired a small handful of Final Fantasy action figures from Final Fantasy 8, 9, and one figure from 10. Over the years, I misplaced them. I never knew where they were, but recently my parents cleaned out their basement and they found a bag that actually had all of the action figures. So I took them out, got them cleaned up, and I thought it would be kind of cool to go figure by figure to look at them and see how detailed they are and see what the figurines of then look like compared to what they do now. So the first one we're going to start off with is Squall from Final Fantasy VIII. Now this is my personal favorite iteration of Squall. He looks like a pretty average guy here. He's got an average build, he's got cool hair. You can see he's got his necklace on him as well that is actually built into the character, you can't remove it. Current iterations of Squall over the years, in particular with the Dissidia franchise, have him looking really lean, almost kind of lanky to a degree. And they've also added just a bunch of stuff to his outfit that just doesn't really need to be there. It makes it look really, really busy. So this original version of him is my personal favorite. As you can see, he's got some posability with his arms. His right arm is the one that moves the most. You can even rotate his hand because that's where the gunblade's going to go. But his left hand, you can only really do so much. His hands are not movable on that one either. And then of course you've got Squall's gunblade, which you can see is actually kind of bent, but if I place it in between something heavy, it would probably straighten it out. You can see some of the paint on the blade itself where the engraving has kind of come off a little bit over the years, but other than that, it's still in pretty good condition. There's this little pin thing on the handle there because on Squall's hand, that's where the gunblade goes to affix it into place so it doesn't fall off. but that's pretty much what the gunblade looks like. So unfortunately it is bent, but we can fix that pretty easily. And it is pretty detailed. So once we have everything put together, that's what it looks like. And that's pretty much the pose you would keep him in since he can't really do much else. You can't put him in his battle pose. You can even have him hold the gunblade gangster style if you want. But that's pretty much what the Squall action figure will look like. He can only really do so much. These were meant to be more of statue figurine type things. You can even rotate his body like he's a Tekken character where his upper body and his lower body will detach from themselves when you're doing a hell sweep. Up next we have Cipher. Now Cipher can't really be moved all that much either. He's pretty much stuck in this one pose. When I was a kid, I actually ripped his right arm off just to see if I could rotate it and move it into a different position, but it turns out you can't. So he's stuck in this position. His left arm goes upwards, but there's not really going to be too much you're going to do with that. His wrist stays in the same spot, but he does have the same little hole in his hand where his gun blade is going to go. As you can see, he's got the designs on his jacket. There's a little bit of wear and tear and discoloration on the jacket itself, but this is pretty much what Cipher looks like. He's going to be stuck in this pose the entire time you have him. As for Cipher's gun blade, his is actually in better condition than Squall's. It does have a slight bend to it, but it's not as bad as Squall's. The paint doesn't seem to have been chipped off either. It's in really good condition, and it's pretty detailed. You can actually see where the gun part actually is and where the 3 little spots are on the blade. It looks really, really good. You can't put that on Squall though. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit his hand, so it's going to be stuck on Cipher. And then once you have Cipher all fixed up, this is what he's going to look like. So it's pretty close to his in-game battle pose. The gunblade isn't technically pointing in the right direction. I think he's got it palm down. And then of course he usually has his left arm up, but it's a pretty cool and decent looking pose. And once you got everything together, he looks really cool. So up next we have probably the most basic figure of the bunch, and that is Zell, primarily because you can't really do too much with him. He's kind of stuck in the one pose he's got. You can't really move his arms around too much. You can move his hands up and down like that, which looking back on it is not something you should probably do. But he is pretty detailed, so since his hands are his weapon, he doesn't come with any other accessories other than a stand because he needs the stand to actually, well, stand, because you can see there's a bend in his foot. But his shoes are incredibly detailed. Those are actually some really nice shoes. I wouldn't mind owning a pair of those myself. But you can even see like down to the detail on the socks that he's wearing. These were licensed by Square and made by Bandai, so there's a lot of detail that's put into these figures themselves, especially all the designs on Zell's jacket. So we have the stand right here, which is what he needs to stand, otherwise he will topple over. The last figure of the Final Fantasy VIII bunch is actually Irving. So as you can see, there's a lot of discoloration on his jacket over the years. It kind of turned into this weird yellowish green kind of color, but he does have a lot of detail in his suit. You can see he's got his necklace there, he's got his vest there. There's the discoloration, of course, on the jacket. His right hand is pretty much, his right arm rather, is pretty much the only one that's going to move. His left one can go up and down just a tiny bit. The cowboy hat itself does not come off, and then he does come with his one accessory, which is his sawed-off shotgun. So there's really not too much going on with Irving's shotgun. It's pretty simple and straightforward. There's a small design on it, but nothing too crazy. You can put the shotgun in his hand and have it rest on his shoulder, and maybe other than Cipher, he's probably the one that looks the best and the most natural. He can stand on his own without any type of platform. The gun stays in his hand on his shoulder, and he looks rather cool. Up next, we have Final Fantasy IX, and this is the Zidane figure. So he does come with two sets of weapons. He's got his double-bladed staff right there, which unfortunately, you can't pose him like he is in the game because his hands are so big that he needs both of them to hold the double-bladed sword, which I can't remember the name of this actual weapon, but you can see how massive his hands are. Thankfully, the weapon itself isn't too bent out of shape. There's some decent detailing going on, but most of it is in the engraving on the blades. He does come with two daggers as well, and it does have a sheath that you can use to store one of the daggers. But you can take both of those daggers and put them in his hands because they fit best. I actually don't remember which dagger goes where. It's been so long since I've played 9, but there's a pretty decent amount in both of these daggers. You can see the bandage wrapped around the handle of that first one right there, and then the second one's got even more detail in it, and it actually fits into that sheath right there. The sheath will go connected to the hip of Zidane. It doesn't really fit all that well, so if you move him around too much, it will fall off, but there's the engraving on that dagger. It's actually pretty well detailed. And then all of the Final Fantasy IX characters come with their own platforms to help them stand. So the stands themselves are really handy. They look nice. They're pretty simple. They just have the FF9 logo on them. And this was actually a set of 4, just like the Final Fantasy VIII set was. All 4 of those figures came together, and with 9, all 4 of these figures are coming together as well. So up next we have Steiner. As you can see, unfortunately, his sword is also really bent. But again, if I place it in between something really heavy, I'm sure it would probably fix itself and straighten out. The feather in his cap is also bent slightly too, but you can see there's a ton of detail on the figure. It literally looks like they took the CG render and put that through the machine, and that's what popped out. It looks really good. You can see all of the armor that's on there, all of the little detail work, some of the nicks and scratches, which weren't from me, those are from the figurine. He does have a sheath too on the back, but unfortunately you can't actually place the sword in there. It's been filled up with either rubber or plastic, so it's basically just there for looks. But overall, Steiner looks really cool. His sword is pretty simple, but his armor itself is so detailed and well put together that it's pretty impressive that that figurine was made back then, and it actually didn't even really cost that much. Third, we've got Vivi, or Vivi, or Vivi, depending on your level of literacy. His character is pretty simple. He comes with the one staff. His hat does not come off, obviously, because that would look kind of weird, but you can see his jacket, his little stripy pants are on there as well. So overall, these figurines are actually really nice and detailed. There's not really too much you can do with them because they're meant, again, to be statues. They're not meant to be toys. So when I was younger, I didn't quite understand that, so I played with them like they were toys. And then last but not least, you have Garnet / Dagger. The interesting thing about her is that she actually has a necklace that hangs off of her. It's not molded to the sculpture itself, so I'm sure you could probably break it off and remove it and whatnot, but it's pretty cool that it's just hanging off there, that nice little crystal. So you can see the little tie and her hair. Her hair is all bundled together. She's got her staff, she's got her boots, she's got those little armor pieces on her thigh. She looks really cool and detailed, so they put a lot of work into these figurines to make them, you know, as nice as they possibly could. And then the last one we have here is Titus from Final Fantasy X. He's probably one of the better looking figures of the bunch. He's got some blue in his hair for some reason. I don't remember that being in the game, and that's actually not discoloration. I remember the figurine itself came like that with the blue on his roots, which is kind of weird. He comes with Brotherhood, which looks really good. Out of all of the weapons that these toys come with, I think Brotherhood probably looks the best. It's a really cool looking water blade, and I think it just looks really impressive. His arm does go up a little bit. He does have a chain too that actually does move around. It's not affixed to the molding itself. There's not too much you can do in terms of posability with Titus. He's pretty much stuck in this one position. You can move his right arm a little bit, but again, most of these figures, you can't place them into their battle positions that you would see in the game. But there is a ton of detail on his armor, even down to how they painted it. There's not one little mistake. There's not a runoff of ink or paint anywhere. There's the detail on the logo and even in his shoes. And other than his face, it's a really cool looking figure. I say other than his face because his face does look a little weird. But the Brotherhood sword itself had a lot of detail in it. There's even the fake bubbles to represent the water. The little attachment on the end does come off and you can rotate it however you want. I don't know why they made it removable, but they did. But the sword itself looks really, really good. And by this time, I think they had gotten a little bit more advanced when it came to creating their statues / action figures. And then as a bonus, we've got Jin Kazama from Tekken 3. You can see he's almost kind of posable. He can kick, he can do some slight hell sweeps that look really, really awkward. But you can move his legs, you can move his arms. He's got a little bit of paint on his chest, unfortunately, but he looks pretty damn cool. Other than the fact that they gave him a really large forehead, he also does usually need a stand to stand. He does come with a platform, but again, I misplaced that because I was a stupid child. But you can see the tattoo on the figurine. You can see his gauntlets right there. He's a really cool looking figure. I also do have a Nina Williams figure, which is somewhere around this house, but I don't know where. But that's pretty much all of the figurines. I thought it'd be kind of cool to just kind of take a look back at all of these figures just to see how detailed they were and just kind of reminisce, because you can't really get these figures anymore. And the ones you get nowadays are rather detailed, but also rather expensive. So that's pretty much the video. If you guys have any thoughts, leave those in the comments down below. I'd actually really be curious to see if anyone out there has these same figures, because the FF8 and FF9 figures, again, all came in a set together. So it was Squall, Cipher, Zell, and Irving, and then FF9, obviously all those characters came packaged together as well. The only one that I got separately was Titus. So it'd be really cool to see if anyone else out there had those same figurines. I am curious, Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.
Gotta keep riding this wave.